Anonymous submission, April 10th, 2023. Last night, while closing up shop, the most popular body lotion shop in my medium-sized town, on a dark and cool spring night, I had hit an accounting inaccuracy while counting down one of the tills, which led me to have to stay an hour later as I had to recount the till 2 more times to find the error. By then, I had a few more closing tasks to finish. Well, my manager asked if I had this, which I replied, yeah, I'm almost done. Probably be about 10 more minutes and I'll be out of here, hopefully. It was 11:25 and I heard the back employee hall door shut behind my manager as she left for the night. It was common for us staff to have to stay after the manager, especially if someone delays us during closing, as the tills did this night. I didn't mind, as I was basically done and had to turn off a few lights and clock out after a nice strawberry pound cake lavender for my parched hands after counting over and over. Somehow, by this time, I was already there till 11:55 p.m. when I tried exiting out the back hall door for employees, although to my surprise it was locked, which they usually never are until the last person leaves for the night, and I didn't have a way to open it from the side I was on. So I assumed it was my manager who forgot I was still inside and locked it out of habit or something. I then proceeded to call the security team and the janitorial office of the mall, but my cell phone just kept dropping after 1 or 2 rings with a ton of static due to the building blocking cell signal, a common occurrence in our store. So I used the landline phone at the register's checkout counter, which has all the direct lines to every mall department there, with just a push of a button. Although when I called each of these same offices, no one would answer. I even got out the walkie-talkie for emergencies under the counter by the fire extinguisher and proceeded to call out for help there and never got any response this way either. I was really frustrated and couldn't call my manager due to the cell service being so poor, but I tried a few times anyway, walking up and down the hall corridors, and by this time it was 10 after midnight and all the doors leading out to the parking lot for shoppers were also locked. I was feeling rather helpless and panicked by this point, feeling like I was in a surreal dream and just really wanted to wake up, but I knew this was real, which made me even more terrified. Although I told myself to calm down and remembered I was okay. I was just at work still, after all, and someone is still here and will eventually let me out. As I was trying to connect to the coffee shop's free Wi-Fi, I saw what looked like flickering television holograms of black and white 50s shopping scenes with families dispensing self-serve ice cream across the way in the food court, to then just flicker out of sight again. At this point, I was really beginning to freak out inside, questioning my own sanity. But then I saw a janitor running with a rolling bucket and mop to the east side of the mall's endless corridor, so I ran after him, turning left around the candy shop and seeing people inside cleaning still and stocking, but I followed the janitor a little longer, but he had ran out of sight by the time I wrapped around the corner, almost sliding into the playground for kids. I immediately ran back to the candy shop, banging on the windows, waving at the staff to help me get out of the mall through their own back hall door. But no one even registered that I was making all this noise and screaming for help. I was so frantic now, and was then that I literally ran into my manager, who was walking with a huge grin and phone up to her ear. with a pink beehive of cotton candy in the other hand. I apologized as she dropped her phone on the super reflective mirror-like polished floors with outdated 60s patterns repeating off into infinity, it seemed, as time was feeling as if it was slowing down for what felt like an eternity. Then eventually, everything felt normal all of a sudden, as my manager said, "Kelsey, what are you doing here? Are you okay? You're so silly, dear. Follow me out. It's okay. I must have accidentally locked you in the store. Don't worry. I have a master key for all the doors in the mall. I'm so sorry." So I followed her, and right as we were getting to one of the doors, I saw my boyfriend, who'd been waiting outside to pick me up, yelling something at me in a hysterical way, it appeared. But it wasn't until I got up closer that I could tell he was screaming, "Go back to your store. Don't come out here." At that point, I looked up at my manager to find her gone, but her keys were still hanging in the lock of the huge glass double doors, where I could still see my boyfriend Rick yelling past the lobby to the other set of double doors. But this time, he was crying hard, and then turned around, running back to the car where he seemed to vanish out of sight. Noticing the parking lot lights were all flickering and dim, which were normally very bright, I grabbed the keys and ran back to my store, as I trusted Rick and didn't want to exit out those doors if there was something he was trying to warn me about. I opened my store's main entrance doors and threw up the gate, running to the back hall door, and remembered I still couldn't unlock from that side. So I ran to another mall exit for shoppers and used the key to get out, proceeding to run all the way around the mall while calling Rick, telling him where I was and to come get me if I was unsafe on the other side. He called me back after 5 times trying to get him to answer. Finally, he drove up with music playing loudly, with a throwback station we both loved blasting, and he just simply smiled, reaching over to fling my door open from the driver's side in a romantic macho way, as if nothing had just happened. The whole drive home, I didn't say much and processed it all. To this day, I really don't know if I imagined these bizarre occurrences or if any of it was even true. I just chalked it up to me having been working nights and while studying for school exams and the new anxiety medicine I was taking perhaps, but I know I wasn't imagining it all, although I was too scared to appear crazy or like a freak to anyone, so I kept it mostly to myself. When I asked my boyfriend Rick why he was yelling to not come out that way, he said he just simply was being silly, but he also seemed not to remember doing that at first, so I dropped it. I was wanting to go on to bed by then, but I can't say I really slept at all that night. So between Rick snoring and my busy thoughts weighing heavily on my mind, I decided to write this to share to your channel in hopes that someone out there can help me make sense of this night. But mostly I wrote this to try to move on in peace and forget that this ever even occurred. The next week at work was so boring and normal that I really began to question everything, really like my reality, my sanity, my beliefs in afterlife and so on. But more I tried to figure it out, the more I felt crazy. So I just had to let it go. I eventually moved to a new store location per request a month later, although the only thing that did seem off when I returned back to work right after my scary experience is that my manager never returned to work again, and I was told that she was transferred to a new store opening up on the other side of town. So I just accepted that answer, although something never really felt right about that. Anyway, I hope this finds you well, and I appreciate you sharing my story here on Candlelit Chronicles. Sincerely, Kelsey.